Welcome, everyone, and thank you so much for tuning in. I'm Josh Golden, the president and publisher for Ad Age, and today you're joining us for a conversation, the Publisher's Fireside version, about how we can all understand the campaign effectiveness in the privacy-first third-party data apocalypse, otherwise known as the death of the cookie. As you're watching this today, let us know in the chat where you're tuning in from, and we'll be certain to shout you out later in the program. So given the challenges that are around the corner with third-party cookies on their way out and post-GDPR regulations like the California Consumer Protection Act and now the CPRA, which tentatively passed last week, have already begun to transform the digital marketplace, and the proprietary data party belonging to the walled gardens has now made it even more powerful. So I ask, what is a brand marketer to do? Joining me today for this conversation is Nancy Smith, the president and CEO of Analytics Partners. Nancy, welcome, and thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks, Josh. I'm delighted to be here.
I'm glad you're here as well. I got to say, I know you're in Florida weathering the storm, so I'm thrilled that you're not without power.
I am too. My generator worked, thank goodness, and power's back today.
God bless generators. All right, let's get this rolling, Nancy. I have to say, I know I just Googled this seconds ago, but understanding the why they called it a cookie was the least confusing piece of this. Knowing how Google is changing their cookie methodology and sharing their data, there's some confusion around the topic. And I was hoping for the first question, if you could help clarify, what third-party cookies, going there, Google's shift is changing, and how, in fact, and what it means for brand marketers.
Sure. And I think if you start with understanding what a cookie is, it catches a small piece of data on your device. And there's first-party cookies. So when I'm surfing on a website, like if I'm shopping on soccer.com for shoes for my son, it remembers where I've shopped. So if I leave and I come back, I can pick up where I left off. And those are first-party cookies, and those aren't going away. And that's great because that lends for a better experience on sites. Now, if I'm on a recipe site looking for a dinner recipe and I was served an ad for, let's say, Nike Phantom soccer shoes, and I clicked on it and went to soccer.com and went ahead and bought those shoes, third-party cookies are what captures that connection between that ad I was served and when I clicked on to purchase. And that is what is being challenged in this new data apocalypse world.
Right. And it seems like it's certainly setting some marketers on their ear a little bit because they're unprepared for this shift. Maybe it's highly relevant because of the obviously the election last week, and there is actually there's rules that have changed, and I want to bring up an article that Garrett Sloan wrote last week about the new CCPA that was passed on 11/3. So I'm going to read an article or a segment of the article here. And I'll ask you to comment on it. California has been the most aggressive state pushing for new rules around data. To comply with the CCPA, brands need to adopt ways to give consumers more transparency about the data they collect and get permission to use that data. The law now has made it more complicated to say target ads from data collected on one website to giving a user visiting another website like Facebook. So obviously, this is still an active conversation that is now even becoming more important because California obviously is a state in the union and is driving innovation, obviously forcing innovation for the rest of the states, given obviously California's population. So can you speak to what that new evolution is driving?
Sure. Well, they're enacting a privacy group that's going to really work towards enforcing that regulation. But I think it's important. The regulation itself provides for an opt-out. So if you've surfed on any site, you probably have been faced with a question that says, are you okay with being tracked? And that's, you have the right to opt out. This new CRPA really ensures that it counts advertising as the sale of information. So that means wherever I go and send that signal that I want to opt out, they can't do behavioral advertising anymore. And this is for all California residents. And if you think about it, that really is going to affect the whole of the United States because you can't just carve out California.
It'd be very difficult. Yeah. Do you think that just because this is a fascinating, growth, looking at I mean, well, let me ask this question. What percent? I, for example, always click accept because, like, I kind of don't mind getting irrelevant marketing to me. What's the percentage of individuals that accept the cookies versus decline it?
I think there's different estimates on that, but Apple's enacting an IDFA consent next year. They were going to do it this year.
A new acronym for us to learn, Nancy. A new one.
This one's easy. It stands for Identifier for Advertisers, IDFA.
Got it.
But the estimates have been about 50% of consumers will opt out, which is huge implications, and which is why Apple actually paused it until next year.
Interesting. So that brings the. I'm sorry, Nancy, you were going to say.
No, but if you think about it, even if 70% would opt in, and I think people generally like ads, what marketers are faced with is, even if it's 30 or 40% of consumers that have been creeped out or really annoyed with ads, you're going to lose that population from who you can speak to. And that's just too high a risk for so many brands.
I agree. And it actually brings me to my next question, which is really, so, I'm a brand marketer. I've used, data from Facebook or Google, they're soon to no longer have access to that data. I'm guessing. And then how can a marketer measure campaign effectiveness without having access to that first party data cookie pool?
Yeah, so campaign effectiveness can be measured in many different ways, and I think measurement needs to evolve with this evolution. The way I think about it, to highlight the complexity, if you think about your browsing history, much like pages in a book, so we have the Book of Josh, for example.
Yeah, it's a good book. Very, very popular. Lots of people want to read it. Lots of people.
The spine of that book was really connected by those third-party cookies. That goes away, and now for 200 million adult Americans, I have tons of pages and virtually no way to connect them at the user level. And that's the big challenge. So what marketers need to do is start planning and experimenting now, connect Facebook and Google and understand their data ecosystems, and really how to work inside them, but recognize that will be inside a silo. And then what data are they willing to share out? Because they will share data out. It'll just be at a higher level. And measurement needs to evolve to connect data at multiple levels. And, there's going to be a lot of painful stitching of identity data together, which unfortunately may not represent businesses today, because there's no replacement for the cookie. That's the big challenge out there.
I'm a big fan. I have to say, it's a really, I know you said that everyone loves ads. I'm not sure if that's totally the case, but all brand marketers love people to target ads, accurately. And I think that's what frankly is the sort of a little bit of we're looking over this precipice and recognizing that brand marketers need to change the way that they've done something that they've gotten comfortable with. All right, let me quickly take a moment to pause, Nancy, and welcome everyone that has joined late. I'm Josh Golden, the president and publisher of Ad Age, and today I have with me Nancy Smith, who is the president and CEO of Analytic Partners, and we're covering new legislation and about the amazing and less caloric data cookie, which is soon to have its demise. And if you'd like to ask a question in the chat, we can bring you into the Q&A later. And today we have watching with us Troy from Oregon, Wanda from North Carolina, Benny from Texas, and Marina from Italy. Welcome, guys, and thank you for tuning in for the conversation today. Nancy, I'm going to go back to the questions here. Clearly, there's a cross-connect, there's been a cross-connect between my physical presence, my desktop presence, my mobile presence, and how they all intermingle. Tell me, with the changes that are happening with the first-party data, collection, are brands going to have to completely build a new forest to start to connect the laptop and the phone and the desktop and frankly even the television? Streaming is so extraordinarily large. The targeting could be done via streaming is obviously not a crazy idea. So how will it look different, and what's a brand marketer going to do if they kind of want to figure out how to move this forward?
Yeah, I think, I've been asked the question, are we building a new forest? And you just asked the same thing. I don't think there's a forest anymore. I think we've got a bunch of desert, we've got some walled gardens, and we're going to likely have some more gardens. As I said before, there's no replacement for the cookie. In my earlier example, when I was targeted for soccer shoes due to my browsing history, because I was looking for recipes for dinner, I went ahead and clicked on the ad and purchased. That line of sight to a customer or user is no longer going to be available. I think what we'll see is there's going to be a lot more connections within Facebook and within Google, but that's only going to represent a siloed view. There are also a lot of consortiums and companies working on data infrastructure that lets consumers continue to get personalized ads where they want them and where they'll have control. But the issue is that's going to be years away. We've got the Partnership for Responsible and Addressable Media, PRAM, which has the ANA, the IAB, the WFA, the 4As, and brands and ad tech players coming together to help define what responsible addressable media is. And that's really connected to the legislation, right? And identity is another option, but the challenge is it's not scalable. It's not as scalable as the cookie. LiveRamp is looking to develop a solution. They're bringing lots of partners in. All of these are great efforts. And I think what marketers really need to do is understand that the cost of those efforts need to be assessed relative to the benefit that they're going to deliver. And if we're looking at partial data or imperfect data, the benefit may not outweigh the cost. And that's the big challenge. And that's why we need to do a lot of experimentation at this point in time.
Interesting. When I think about sort of all the people that I talk to on an ongoing basis about the efforts they're executing in their, with their brands, it seems like they're always thinking about where the brand arbitrage opportunity might be, given this situation is sort of growing and changing. There's always a chance for some brand to sort of leap into the fray and have a solution. I guess there's a lot of solutions that are out there. What should brand marketers be paying attention to really recognize the path that they need to go execute to go successfully achieve their goal?
Well, I think importantly, brands should look at new and different ways to serve ads and assess those versus the cost of targeting. That's going to likely be much less efficient. Certainly ads served via relevancy and context. So I could be served an ad for soccer shoes just because I'm on goal.com and looking up the latest score from Liverpool versus whomever they played yesterday. My son's a soccer player.
You're big into soccer. You dig soccer.
It's on the home computer and on the TV quite often.
Okay.
The other thing brands should do is really leverage their first-party data assets and build trust with their customers for that value exchange. That's going to be even more powerful for brands in the future.
I've heard that the concept of the third or data, basically the treasure trove of data that a brand has will soon be added to their P&L. So that it is no longer just like, here's the cash we made and the money we spent and here's the the margin. It's also, here's the data that we have that's actually measurable and really valuable. Do you see that happening with brands as this? Obviously, the more first party data you have, the more valuable your brand is effectively, right?
Yeah, and you can see that with certainly Amazon has monetized quite a lot of their data, right? And we see that with Walmart Media Group now and Target Roundel.
Yeah, I agree. And they, they're in store, Roundel, for example, in store media, and Walmart in media in store has the capacity to recognize someone coming into the store if in fact they have the app on their phone and then they can cross connect. But that first party data is extraordinarily valuable. I'm going to pivot, Nancy, if it's okay, to our Q&A questions that might be relevant. I think some of these feel like inside baseball to me a little bit. So maybe you'll be able to both clarify the question as well as identify. So here's the first one. How can we still measure campaigns? I mean, I guess it's a relatively obvious question, but how can we measure? I guess they're asking, with the death of the cookie, can you still measure a campaign?
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think campaign measurement is dead. And, I think it's really important to recognize that people-based marketing doesn't necessitate people-based measurement. You can measure at a higher level and without identity, so without that privacy challenge. In fact, we have a client, a major QSR brand that runs multiple campaigns across many of their products. So they have enormous amounts of campaign data, many running simultaneously and with hundreds of combinations of message, product, channel. And they really needed to understand cannibalization across their product line, synergies, weekly and seasonal impacts, and what products to focus on within different windows of the day, et cetera. And we were able to leverage granular data from the walled gardens, not at the user level, but granular data, and provide an understanding of the impact of campaigns, not just the synergistic impact, the cascading impacts, as well as diminishing returns. So how much should they put against each campaign? And they were able to optimize their different calendars across multiple objectives. And actually, this was recognized for this client by the ANA. They were a Genius Award finalist for this event.
Oh, there you go. So actually moving the ball forward. That's great. That's great. There's another one. Tell me about what so I don't know this. What about identity graphs? Is there any promise there? What's an identity graph, Nancy? I feel like it's something, like that Freud would do. Is there an id in there?
No, it's pretty simple. It's just really based upon your some level of user information that could be permission based, that can stitch together. If you think about Facebook and Google, they have wonderful understanding of identity, right? An identity graph, there's part of the solutions that are looking at stitching together data based on deterministic elements. So I know for sure, Josh, that those pages, remember we talked about your web history is pages of a book, and I'm looking to find that spline to connect them together. I can do that deterministically. So based on definite information, I know it's you. Or I can do that probabilistically. So it looks like these pages go together. And I think identity graphs are looking at a combination of those two. And that's wonderful for targeting, but it's more challenging for measurement. So that's one of the things that I think marketers need to look at is proof points, and ensure that they're able to validate a lot that they're doing with the identity graphs, because a lot of them are just being built or rebuilt.
Can I just ask a quick question, just because I'm curious? I'm sure many folks are. Knowing, if I'm going to run a campaign with Google or Facebook, I could still use their data, right? It's not like that's going to go away. They're just going to rent it to me. Absolutely.
And you can work inside their ecosystem, but you have to recognize your measurement will be within their ecosystem.
And I won't be able to take that data outside and then apply it to anything else externally.
Only at a higher level. You won't be able to take the user information outside.
I see. And just because you are the CEO of Analytic Partners, I'm guessing you have addressed this problem in particular. Is there anything that you could offer to brand marketers or publishers about what it is that you offer to help solve for this problem?
Sure. And I think measurement does need to evolve, and we've done a lot of evolving through our years. And we have a future-proof solution. It incorporates multiple levels and layers of data that doesn't require identity, but can leverage first-party data to deliver insights. So it's multidimensional and multi-level. It's part of our commercial decisioning system. It's commercial mix analytics at its center. And it uses that deep granularity that we just spoke about for that campaign measurement and connects to the user level where it's available. But it's very different than what's been out there in the marketplace today, which has been talked about as that top-down, bottoms-up. And that bottoms-up is that dependence that so many have on either identity or the cookie. And that's really where that unified solution of MMM plus MTA, top-down, bottoms-up, falls short. Our solution, Commercial Mix Analytics, is multi-level, so it doesn't fall short. It is future-proofed.
Wow, it's. I got to tell you, I've had 600 conversations about this, but this conversation, Nancy, was so informative and valuable. I think it identified, even with the legislation that happened last week, to help identify where are we currently in this process. So I want to thank you for your time today, and that I'm mostly thankful that you didn't lose power and that you were able to expand the conversation. Thank you so much, Nancy. Ladies and gentlemen, Nancy Smith, CEO of Analytics Partners. We so appreciate your time today. Thank you, Nancy.
Thanks, Josh.